Hey, thank you all for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste. If you've never been here before, I appreciate y'all for checking me out. Don't forget this podcast is on YouTube. So if you search Celeste the Therapist, you can find it. I have a special guest with me. I'm going to have him introduce himself to you all.
Yes, thanks, Celeste. First of all, this is Shon Hyneman. I am excited to be on Celeste the Therapist podcast because I've been a long time listener. So to
That's so
actually,
exciting.
yeah, right. So to actually be here in the same space with you, or at least virtually, right? Uh, I'm like, I made it, Mama. I made it. I made it on Celeste the Therapist. I'm good. Yeah, but yeah, Shon Hyneman here. I am the founder of It's Scary to Remarry. You can find it on YouTube. And basically what I am is I am your pre-engagement coach. And what that entails is I basically help you before you buy the ring. I'm the guy that you see before you buy the ring. So that way I can save y'all a bunch of money, because there's a lot of people that buy engagement rings, and you figure by the time they get to whoever they're coaching with, or the pastor, or whoever, they already got their mind made up that they're gonna marry this person.
Yeah.
So I want to reach you before you buy the ring, so that way I can say both of y'all some heartbreak, just in case things don't work out, and maybe have you think twice. That doesn't mean that marriage is a bad thing, but I just kind of, I wish more people kind of had that direction. And I think a lot of times we don't have that in today's society. So this is where I step in.
Nice. I appreciate you. And I know, I always tell people I enjoy talking about relationships, which is why I have a regular relationship segment with Jeff. But I struggle with the counseling aspect of it because people see me once they're struggling. And I think there's so much that goes into relationships, but I think we put pressure on ourselves to be in one, thinking that that's why we're not happy. So I'm really excited to hear your journey and your story, because I got to make sure you ain't playing the people like the guy. What was the guy's name who was talking about relationships and got caught up all the way up?
Oh my God. Are we going to say his name on the air, Celeste?
No, we don't have to say his name, but
Okay,
we gotta
but
get his story to see why you trying to do it. Are you trying to what you trying to do? We're gonna get into it though, right? You know how I am, so
yeah, right. I think we all know who you're talking about.
okay.
But that's far from me.
That is far from you. So Shon, because you live in Texas now,
Yes.
and you have this branding called Scary to Remarry.
Yes.
Have you been married before? And what was that like for you?
Yes, I was married before. I was married for 14 years before I went through a divorce.
How old
And
were you when you got married?
I was 24. I was a
Okay.
kid.
Mhm.
Yeah. And looking back now, I would say I think it's almost better for guys to marry older nowadays, and don't get me wrong, there's exceptions to the rule. I'm not speaking in absolutes. I'm just saying I think it's better that guys just marry a little older. But anyway,
Well, what made you 24? What during that time, like, were you ever raised in church? Did you feel like marriage was the ultimate goal? I'm curious about, because I got married young as well. So I'm just curious about where your mindset was about the marriage piece.
how old were you, Celeste, when you first got married?
So I was 25, 20.
Oh,
Yeah, I was 25. But, I talk, sometimes I share like little bits and pieces of like, I definitely wasn't ready. I'm grateful that I was able to like look at myself and see where like I thought relationship was like this ultimate goal. And it was supposed to help fix me and heal me and like fill the gap. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about it, is because I was able to look at myself and like make a lot of changes. But I know like that's not easy to do. So that's why I appreciate people like you that kind of like share their story, because it's going to be important. So people aren't like wasting so much time.
yes, yes. I always tell people my superpower is my vulnerability. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's my superpower. So I don't mind sharing my story. Yeah, so I was 24. I think like you said, the pressure, some of it came from the church,
Okay.
because you want to do right. and you want to get married, you have, you're attracted to a young lady, you want to do this thing right, and you marry. And it was one of those things where when we met, everything was cool, but she was already a single parent. She was about 7 years older than me. So I was like, okay, she's a little more seasoned, so everything gonna work out. And I think that the thing, there was no infidelity. Let me say that. Neither one of us cheated. Just put that out there. I just think we really grew apart. People say, don't come with that excuse. Don't say we just grew apart. It got to be something different. No, we grew apart. She was headed in one direction. I was headed in another direction. Uh, Overall, I mean, from spiritually, mentally, financially, like in all areas. But I think this is important, why you need to really stay in touch with your spouse, because they're always changing. They're always evolving. Um, there's one quote by, I think, John Maxwell. He says, every day you're either preparing or you're repairing. you know so I think it's important that you stay in tune with whoever you marry with or in a relationship, and that can look like date night, that can look like just checking up on you overall, that can look like therapy, right? Where you are in life, and that way you can gauge, like, okay, this is where they might be struggling, or this is where they grown, and I need to be a part of their world.
Yeah.
And when you part of their world, I believe that's when the two worlds starts to uh, they move further away from each other, because y'all on two different pages.
And just so we're on the same page for my listeners, even if you're not 24, even if you're 34, growing apart is something that really happens to anybody, regardless of what age they get married. Is that fair to say?
Yes, because when I divorced, I was 40. And
And
go ahead.
I was gonna say, you kind of said, and it wasn't infidelity.
Okay.
Why is it? Because a lot of times people, that's, while I'm working with somebody, they will be in a situation they're not completely happy with, but if it's infidelity, it's easier for them to leave than when it's something else that's happening. What do you think that's all about? Because the way you said it was like, that's pretty much typically the only reason why people kind of divorce.
Yes, it's almost sad, right? That we always have to boil it down to infidelity, and that's why I left. There could be I mean, think about, I think the number two reason people divorce is money, right? So you have a bunch of different variables going on that you can divorce for a bunch of reasons. But I think people always, especially, and if I could just be straight up, I think when you have a man that's talking about divorce, somebody's assumption is automatically he must have cheated. So that's why I put that out there to try to get people to, let's be on the same page. Let's get this clear, because somebody in their head already, they thinking, yeah, he cheated, he a dog, they already project this stuff on you. So
What
that's
was
why.
it like? What was it like coming into a relationship with somebody that already had a child? And I know sometimes the blended family piece can be hard for some people, but what was your mindset around that?
I thought I was just going to be super dad. I At 24, I just thought that I was just going to be this Superman that was going to, come and save the world. And if statistics be true, according to Psychology Today, I believe they said it almost take up to almost 10 years for a family to truly gel. And that takes a lot of time and patience. And he was already 12. So he was this oak tree already, if you will. He was already set in his ways. And that's not saying I didn't have any influence in his life, but I just had this preconceived notion that I was going to save the day, because I'm a Christian and I love God and she loved God, and we just going to sail off into the moonlight, right? You had this ideal, but it's one of those things where you just do the best that you can. And I think that's one reason why I was okay with going through a divorce, because I felt that that I've done the best that I could do. And I was able to, it's like basketball players, right? And when they play a game and they team lost, but they might have scored 63 points or 50 some points, they can say, I did everything I could do. but we lost the game, and you can walk away with that knowing that you did the best that you can. And that's how I feel about my marriage as well. When I went through my divorce, I did everything I could, and it wasn't in the cards. I've learned from it.
Yeah. And that's a good perspective for people that might be going through a divorce right now or in the process of it. Because I think sometimes people feel like a failure because nobody gets married to get divorced. Like that's never the plan. And so sometimes it's hard to see how much, people have grown apart. But just kind of the acceptance and the grieving, it's a grieving process. And like you said, it wasn't like something specifically went wrong. It's just you literally were on two different pages and it just didn't work anymore. What was that like for you to finally kind of accept that? Because 14 years is a long time to be in a relationship with somebody that you got married to just in the hopes of staying with.
Yeah, it was tough. Honestly, Celeste, my marriage was over before it was actually over. It was one of those things where maybe I can say maybe about about 9 years in, maybe 8 or 9 years, I wasn't feeling it, but I just kept on fighting. And I remember she asked me one time, she was like, if you don't want this marriage anymore, she just like asked me like, you don't love me anymore, huh? I'm like, yeah, I do. But I was just trying to do the right thing. And I'm just thinking in my head, is am I going to be cursed if I divorce her? Because the Bible talks about God hates divorce, and, you just trying to do right by God, and you're trying to do the best that you can. And you try to work through it, and you just realize it doesn't work. We went and got some therapy. We went to a session, and we should have done more, but we didn't. I just think it was one of those things where we both had to learn from a divorce. I think it definitely made me a better person, and it helped me realize my flaws and my own personal issues and things that I needed to fix in my personal life.
Nice. You seem like the type of person that knows how to like take ownership of what's happening, which is extremely helpful with the healing process. It may not have been your fault, but it takes two people to be in a relationship. So really looking at the part you played in it and how like things could have looked differently for you. Tell people a little bit how powerful it is to like kind of take that ownership when it comes to this process of like healing from like a divorce or trying to like get out of a relationship that like it's not really sustainable anymore.
Mm-hmm. I think it's one of those things where I believe, this is just my theory, I believe that you can heal faster once you take ownership. You can recover faster because now you're not so caught up on that person. You're caught up on, this is why I went wrong. And I think that's when the healing can begin. I think a lot of people, they stunt their growth because they're constantly complaining about what he did wrong or what she did wrong, but they never really want to accept their own mess. And when we do that, I believe you can have so many breakthroughs, because I realized, I was like, man, I need to be in therapy more often. I was immature. I would do a lot of stonewalling. I was defensive, insensitive. I look good on Sundays though. Sundays and Wednesdays look good on church, at church. And I think a lot of it comes from just immaturity and not knowing how to process my feelings. I lack empathy. That was something that was huge. I really couldn't look outside of myself and see how she was really doing as a person.
Do you feel like that part, I don't like to say gender stuff, but I do know in America, men typically don't have the liberty to express emotions and feel, but they do feel, but they've learned to like stuff them. Do you think just kind of growing up as a man in America, especially a Black man in America, caused that kind of mindset of the lack of empathy that you realized like you didn't really have?
Yeah, I think that's huge because, like you said, especially being, a Black man, and because I grew up in a single parent home and I didn't get a lot of love and affection and things of that nature. I'm not blaming my mom, but I can see how that played into my adulthood. I can see why I would ignore my feelings, or, I would shut myself down because I'm thinking, at the end of the day, I just need to make her happy. I just had the whole happy wife, happy life thing. Like, forget what was going on with me. I just trying to make you happy, which isn't healthy within itself. So once I learned how to process my feelings and be honest, and then I think too, when you can be a safe place for your spouse or your significant other, I think that helps tremendously. If you're able to say what you need to say without them being defensive, and have a listening ear and be like, what I hear you say is, and you finish,
Yeah.
and I think you can have a space. Alicia Keys said it best. She said, she says, your secrets are safe with me. Just look at me as the pages of your diary, right? I
Yeah.
think all men look for that, and women as well, but yeah.
But it's not talked about enough. I don't think men feel I don't sometimes honestly I don't think men know they're looking for that or need that. And I love the fact that you're able to acknowledge, I didn't get that from home. And it doesn't make our parents bad parents, right? Especially like most of us, like, our parents were always in survival mode, trying to put food on the table, especially as a single mom. So it's not about, like, I think sometimes people struggle with that when they know their mom did the best that they could. But it's important to understand what we didn't have so we can give ourselves what we need. Because at over 18, nobody's going to come and say, Shon, do you need this? Do you need me to do this? It's like, you really got to learn yourself. We're always growing, and we can always evolve if we always are paying attention to what's happening. Does that feel like okay to hear and say?
Yes, for sure. Like you said, pay attention. And that was something that I didn't do. I wasn't paying attention to what I was feeling and being honest. It was one of those, sometimes it would be times where I just didn't want to argue. I would just shut down the whole conversation because I'm like, I don't want to try to work through, I don't want to work that muscle of dealing with vulnerability and dealing with a disagreement, like trying to work that muscle. And I'm realizing even now as I'm older, that it's necessary. Some things, some arguments you can't avoid, and not even arguments. I would say disagreements.
Disagreements, yeah.
It just helps grow that muscle, so that way y'all know how to deal with each other when those tough times come.
Yes, and that muscle is kind of like, if you ain't been to the gym in a while, you go, you be like, you be in so much pain. But if you don't keep getting up and going, then every time you go back to it, that pain's going to be there. And I think for men especially, and I'm not excusing like behavior, but I just think for men especially, growing up in America, they don't typically learn how to access that vulnerability. And I think, whether we're talking about blogs or social media or like the culture of like TV and entertainment, they don't show men in a vulnerable way. And if they are shown in a vulnerable way, people laugh at them. I've seen the same kind of like person, I don't want to say his name, like berate a woman and then berate a man. And in the comments with the women, people are like going to her defense, and with the man, they're laughing. And I just think that a lot of times men don't give themselves grace or give themselves the ability to feel. And I think it does a huge disservice in the relationship.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why it's important that we have mentors. I've had mentors. I've had, even in my experience in church has been great. A lot of people talk bad about the church and the pastor stealing money and he's sleeping around. Like, that wasn't my experience. And, I've had pastors and elders, and I mean, these guys had mega churches, and I've seen them build churches from the infancy and took me along for the ride, and called me out on my BS whenever I got out of line. No, you don't. No, you shouldn't. No, that's not how you treat a woman. That's not how you do this or that. You should give. Who are you giving to? Who are you helping? That whole thing. Like, a lot of men nowadays, they don't get that. So that's why I say I want to pay it forward, because I'm one of the people who has been blessed to have that experience.
Nice. That's good. Yeah, mentorship is important. Now, when you got your divorce, you married for 14 years. Now you end up being divorced and single. Did you guys have kids together?
Yes, we have a 18-year-old daughter together. I've had full
So
custody of her for the past 2 years. I was with her whole life, but that we were apart for about a year because I relocated. I remarried, relocated. And I had to pay child support. I had to pay alimony for a year. So anybody who's listening, I feel your pain if you're going through that. I get it. But as a man, you can get custody of your child if you are willing to put the work in.
So now you divorced. What was it like getting back into the dating scene? Now you have a daughter as well. What was that like? What year was this, by the way? Just so I need to figure out what apps were out by then.
Oh, this was 2017, like 2016.
Oh yeah, so the apps was on it by then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I got married in 2008, so before when the phones was free after 9, like, you know, it was just like a party line on the landline phone.
Yeah.
Talking all day on the phone. Now when people be talking about, they be texting and like what does that mean when they said that? I'm like, listen, like I didn't do the texting stuff. Like I just had a conversation. I feel so old. So now you 14 years, you dusty, going back out in the day. What was that like for you? That must have been so weird.
You know what, Celeste? My wife and I was talking about this the other day. I didn't do a lot of dating. Now, I'm just going to say this. I'm just going to be honest because it's the only way I know how to do this. Once people found out that I was going through my divorce, because we had separated, and it was just one of those times where, I need you to sign the papers, and it was just tough trying to get people to sign up on the paper. So that was a story within itself. So we had separated though, so I was already living by myself. But once people realized that, like, I was going through this divorce, like there were so many options, and I was just thinking, like, you were probably just waiting for me to just actually go through this divorce. I was like, I couldn't believe the amount of people or amount of women that was like, oh, okay, well, what you doing after work? And I never took that route because I told myself that what would that look like, and to each his own. I'm not here to judge. But I didn't want to take that route because I did a show. I did a podcast called "Should I Have a Whole Phase After I Divorce?" And
was that the name of it?
That's the name of the show. It's one of my most listened to podcasts. People are like, yeah.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, right. So anyway, I'm saying all that to say is that I just wanted to make sure that I was setting an example for my daughter, that I wanted to show her what that looked like as far as recovery, and just focusing on her and me focusing on myself without anybody else in the picture.
So you knew because in order for that to happen, you had to have known what you wanted and didn't want by that time. Right. And I think sometimes, so did you throughout the divorce process and did you kind of like do a lot of like evaluation of yourself and what was going on? Was that part of your healing?
Okay. Yes. That was a lot of my healing because I remember my ex-wife telling me, I said, what can I do better from this day moving forward? All the things that she was trying to tell me from from years of marriage, I finally heard it when we were going through the divorce. I was like, oh, that's what you were saying. I was like, that's why I said it took me a divorce for me to see where I went wrong.
Okay. So now you didn't really do the dating thing. But how did you end up meeting your wife?
Well, let's clear this. I talked to one or two girls, but it wasn't,
Wasn't a lot.
It wasn't like, yeah. But I met my wife on Instagram.
For real?
Yeah, I met her on Instagram, and we married 6 months after meeting, and we were in a long distance relationship. Like we were talking on Skype every day.
What was that? Crazy. Was that scary? Was that scary, or was you welcoming it, or what was that like? That's not a common story.
It was, yeah. It was almost too good to be true at first because I was like, for her to be this fine, something got to be wrong with her. Because I would like some of her pictures on Instagram. She would like some of mine. So I would scroll down further into her history and I would like more of her pictures. And matter of fact, she took a screenshot of our first conversation and I put it on Instagram. It's the funniest thing ever. And yeah, I slid in the DM and, you know, hey, thanks for liking my pictures, vice versa. And we started talking. And next thing you know, we was talking on Skype every night. And I asked her, I know I sound old, I asked her to be my girlfriend after about a month and a half after meeting her. And I saw her in person about a month after. So I caught a flight out to Texas to go see her. And I was like, I need to see if this woman is the real deal because she's all that in a bag of chips on Skype. But I need to see if she's the real deal. So I caught a flight, went to go see her. We hung out, kicked it. And I was like, yeah, she's really the truth. And 3 months in, I proposed to her. I proposed to her over Skype.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. That's an amazing story. And were people in your life shocked or worried for you? What was that like for you to try to like say, no, I got this?
Yeah, family, friends, people were like, why are you settling? You know, you can go and talk to other women. Why would you settle down? You've been with one woman for 14 years. Why would you want to just be, you know, settling back down again and all sort of stuff? So yeah, people thought I was having a midlife crisis because I'm 12 years older than her. So people was like, oh my God, he done lost it.
Do you think the difference is that now, you know, with it didn't feel scary to remarry because you were aware and knew yourself and knew what you wanted? So it was a different intentional type of relationship.
Yes, well, I will say it was scary to remarry, and that's why that's why my podcasts and videos are based on that, is because sometimes you ask yourself going through a divorce, especially if you're really getting close to somebody that you're dating or you're seeing, you if they're marriage material, you asking yourself, do I really have what it takes? Because I said I do before. Like, can I really follow through this time? You know, did I really deal with all my personal issues? Have I dealt with my unaddressed trauma, or, you know, just things you start to question yourself, like, because, you know, the divorce rates are higher the second time around.
Mm-hmm.
So you like, I'm putting myself even at a higher risk remarrying. So you do question yourself. And sometimes, because there are some people, they go through a divorce and they I would never marry again, or I would never get into another relationship, you know, because they're done.
The trauma of it, of just the whole process is, but for you, it sounds like between the mentorship, therapy, just evaluating, taking ownership, like all of that had to happen for you to get over this fear that you have. And again, people may choose not to marry, and that's fine. It's not,
Right.
it's not like people have to remarry, but there are some people that may want to be in a relationship, but there's so much fear around it.
Yeah. Yeah. And marriage isn't for everybody.
Right.
You know, it's not. So if you're single, enjoy your life. But I just feel like she was the woman for me, that she had 80% of everything I could want in a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that 80% is because, you know, everybody got issues,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know. So I'm like, I'm good. People could say I settled, but I think the problem is with a lot of people is, if you find, say, 80%, whatever your percentage is, people are always trying to chase that 100, and nobody's perfect, you know?
Yeah.
So people will leave what they have and try to build a stable, and then try to find that 100% of a person. And it's like, nobody's perfect, you
Right.
know? So if you can find that one person, don't lose that one person trying to chase somebody else who might not be worth it, because you mess around and lose out on a good person because you being greedy.
Yeah, and I think another part of that coin is that people focus on the 20%, right? I think sometimes when people come from a lot of trauma or struggles or not seeing a healthy relationship, they can't see the good. They only see the negative and think the grass is greener on the other side. And so it's important. I think just doing the work and understanding who you are and what you want. I have a book called Relationship Goals. And, the first two parts is who am I, right? Like that's important. Like what is it that I want? What are my values? Not knowing that you'll always get into anything or find yourself cycling through different situations that may not benefit you, right? Is that fair to say, you think?
Very fair. And I knew what I wanted to.
Yeah.
I think at 24, I thought I knew what I wanted, but I didn't.
No, I get it. And again, my 24-year-olds that's listening, some of y'all may know I've met some really mature 24-year-olds.
That's true.
And so we don't want to alienate anybody.
That's true. You're right. I've met some amazing 24-year-olds myself. So
now you get remarried, and then you decided to create this brand, Scary to Remarry. What made you decide to put yourself out there like that and really become passionate about working with people and relationships? Like, what was that about?
Here's the funny thing, real quick. I wanted to say this, just kind of a quick backstory. I was podcasting because people think I just popped up on the scene. I've been doing this since 2013. I just rebranded.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, in 2013, what were you doing then?
I was doing the same thing. I just failed publicly. I was doing relationship. I was doing relationships.
So you've always been into relationships. Oh wow! So where do you think that passion? I know where my passion comes from. Where does your passion come from when it comes to relationships in general?
Just the household I grew up in. And I think I've always had a passion for relationships. I'm big on psychology. Like I love that stuff. I was one of those guys who, growing up in the hood, I would sneak off to the library and go and get books and I guess I'm dating myself. I'm talking about the library, right? I would sneak off to the library and go get books. And I wouldn't tell my friends because it was like, why would you go to the library? That's stupid. It wasn't cool, but I was that dude.
Wow.
So I was doing this back in 2013. I had probably about 150 videos on YouTube. I had got my little YouTube money, all that stuff. And I went through a divorce publicly.
Wow. Oh, you even talked about it publicly as well? Oh, yeah. So you've always been in the eye. You just kind of rebranded now that you've gone through some things. So you've already had like a lot of knowledge and wealth of information. Because we could I could be a therapist, but that don't mean I'm doing everything I need to do in my personal life. I might know the knowledge, right? So it's like you have, because it's people don't fail because there's a lack of knowledge. It's the application of the knowledge, right? There's so much information out there. I say that all the time, but a lot of us aren't applying it. So now that you're 2017, all the, years later, you already have that information, but now you're really applying it and living it out, and it just feels different. So you become even more passionate about what you were already passionate about.
Yes. It was crazy because I shut down my account because there was some videos that had my wife in them, my ex-wife and stuff. So I got rid of all my videos, lost my money. Took about a year and a half off and just focusing on my wife and I. And one day I decided to post our wedding picture on Twitter and it went viral. And my wife was like, I ain't ready for this. She was just like, this is way too much. And I was just thinking like, okay, well, I'm thinking like, I didn't think it was going to go there. I just shared my story online and people ate it up and it caused some tension for us early in our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to get to a place where we both were comfortable because she knew this is what I love, and living it out now. So I think that's the difference. I tried living it out before, but I just didn't. I had the tools, I just didn't know how to use them.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And so now you have this brand, Scary to Remarry.
Yes.
You have the YouTube, you have the podcast, and now you have the tools and know how to use them. Who is your audience, you think, when you think about everything that you're doing, this passion that you have? What would your audience look like, you think?
My audience is people who've been through a divorce. And then even there are some people who aspire to marry, because you got people who are just okay with dating, but then you got people who aspire to marry. They just don't have the tools.
Yeah.
And this is where I come in. I always tell people what separates me from a lot of relationship coaches is my vulnerability. And I will get on a YouTube video and say, look, I haven't arrived yet, but with me teaching this video, it's helping me to go be a better husband to my wife. Because with me teaching myself online before the world, I have to apply this, and I'm teaching myself. So I'm holding myself accountable to a degree.
Yeah.
You hold me accountable to a degree because now I'm on the show.
To people who are struggling with this idea of not being in a relationship. I have like 20, 22-year-olds, feeling like life is passing them by and they're not happy because they don't have anybody. I've been married for a while, even though I can say things that are helpful, but sometimes I know in the back of people's head, they're like, you married, it's easy for you to say. What would you say to people, because you were married for 14 years, that feel that way, that they're not happy because they're not in a relationship?
Yeah, I was just saying, enjoy your life. Go and travel. Go to a movie by this. I mean, if you don't like your own company, what makes you think other people won't like your company? If you don't like your own company, get to enjoy yourself. You can network with people. You can go on dates, all that stuff. You can pursue whatever it is that you want to pursue. Because even with me podcasting and doing videos, and I have to set that time apart, and I have to get this squared away with my wife first. I have to make sure that this time is cut out. If you're single, you can do whatever you want to. I always say the joke, when you're single, when you eat, everybody eat. When you cold, everybody's cold. When you hot, everybody hot. It's just you. Enjoy your life. And I think a lot of times we go wrong when we're constantly when we're looking. We just, just looking. So we're willing to accept whatever. But if you're enjoying your life and that energy, you will be able to attract people from that energy, that you're confident and you have enough confidence in yourself, knowing that you're good, that if you come along on this ride with me, I'm going to make your life better.
Yeah.
When you have that kind of confidence, you will attract a different people.
Yeah. And for, what you said of like, if you don't even enjoy your company, how is somebody, I never heard it said that way, but I think that's an important thing to think about. Like, if you are struggling with being alone, then do you really like enjoy your company? And it's nothing wrong with wanting to be in a relationship, but I think it's really important to make sure you're having a relationship with yourself, because when you have a relationship with yourself that's very healthy and very intentional, you're not going to pick up anything. You're going to realize what's not for you. I heard this example of like, because, if you ever went to the grocery store and you were hungry, you end up overbuying or buying things you don't really need. But like, if you're full, if you're satisfied, your mindset in the grocery store is different. It's intentional, right? You're not just picking up anything, looking what I can get real quick to eat because I'm starving, and break your diet or whatever you're trying to do. So I think it's so important to like really like choose you. And again, nothing wrong with the relationship piece, but making sure you're intentional about it.
I love that. The whole grocery store analogy. That's so good. I like that.
The analogy queen. I think God be speaking to me and be giving me these analogies because mental health is so hard. It's really hard to conceptualize these things that we deal with, but then when it hits differently, when you can be like, oh yeah, actually that makes sense, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. You meet people where they are, right?
I meet people where they are. Now, where do you see like scary to remarry going? Because what you're doing is amazing, and I think especially with you being a Black man, vulnerable. I think we need to see more of that. What does it look like for you, even beyond the podcast and the YouTube?
Yeah. It's all about mentorship. It's all about paying it forward. I think it's important that I help raise up other healthy men, because when I say pay it forward, like I said before, there's been men in my life that help hold me up. I would not be the man I am today without those men. And, and so many of our young men are missing what I had. So if I can be that piece for other people and other couples, because I mean, I have my own personal therapist, and my wife and I, we have our marriage therapist. She got her own therapist. Like we serious about that mental health. So if you can help form a community, if you change in one life at a time, you just never know how many other people they can impact just by you impacting one person.
Yeah, community is huge. I really believe in it. And I think that, I started this podcast in 2018 because I've recognized as a therapist, a lot of times people look at like healing as just like therapy and psychiatry. And I just think about there's so many other ways that people have healed, and there's so many other people out here doing other things that you can add to your life, because socioeconomic status is a real barrier to like some people's process. And I get that. And I
Mm-hmm.
really want to let people like learn how to use what they have and what's available to them. The knowledge is out there, it's the application. And if I can get people that are applying it, have applied it, are able to share their story, I think it'll give people hope. And I just want to,
Mm-hmm.
I really want to just see people heal. I just have a passion because of my journey, just wanting to see people heal. So I'm like really grateful, for you and what you do, and just your willingness to come on the podcast and kind of share your story. I think it's super dope.
Well, thank you. I definitely appreciate it. Like I said, I've been you in my rotation, so I'm listening to you every week, learning things from you and your guests. I just love learning, especially in the area of relationships and overall mental health and growing and maturing. I'm big on those things, so I appreciate what you do and what you do for the community and the podcast listeners. Because Lord knows how many times you helped me. I go tell my wife some stuff. I'll be like, no, I'm listening to this podcast the other day. So I know I appreciate you as well. So
Thank you, thank you. Those stories help me keep going. And like you said, the more we pay it forward, the more people can use it, in their lives. So thank you.
yeah.
Um, are there anything? One of the things I like to ask is like if somebody's going through something right now in regards to like their relationship and trying to like heal from it, what kind of encouraging words would you say to them around trying? Because you did a multitude of things to get yourself to a place of like really being aware. What would you say to them? Like could be a first step to working through some like of their healing journey.
Mm. Oh, there's so many. You could take so many areas. For I would say, just first of all, if you can get some therapy, get that. That I think that's very important. If you are a student of reading, I would say get some books that's going to help you understand yourself, or help you understand relationships, or just kind of wherever you are in life. Like if you're big on spirituality, like invest your time in that. If you big on mentorship, invest in that. If you're your health, right? Like I think whatever you want to do, just focus on that and that one thing alone, and kind of help take you off the path of you worried about somebody else. I think if we could focus our energy on the necessary things, I think we'll be in a better spot. Opposed to running around chasing somebody who don't even want us anymore. We wasting so much time.
Yeah, that's good. And I know, guys, whoever's listening and struggling with that is easier said than done.
True.
It's easier to say not to chase after somebody when you feel your emotions are there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's easier to
No
say that. But what Shon is saying is important because you're working on reframing your mind. So if there's a passion that you have or something you want to work on, get in the books, spirituality, listening to something, it's going to help your mind work on looking at something different. You are over 18, so it's up to you to kind of shake that up. Like asking people this question, because I always hear something, I'm like, yes, that's so good. And I think that for people that are struggling with trying to get over a relationship or like focus on themselves, know that it's hard, right? And so like I know you can't automatically just switch it on and off, but small increments is going to help, right? Taking, even though like you may be struggling all day, but be intentional and listen to that that YouTube person that you like, or that sermon that you like, or that book, right? So the goal is to like feed yourself some information so that you can work on changing your mindset. That's huge. Like my biggest thing is about shifting the way you think. And the only way to shift the way we think is to actually introduce some things to our lives. And it may not feel good in the moment, but just know that eventually your mind and body is going to have to fall in line with what you're presenting it. If you're only presenting it with stalking them on Instagram or calling them or all of this stuff and cycling through, then that's the only thing your mind's going to be focused on. But you still go ahead and stalk the person, but get that spiritual guidance in there so eventually it can offset that stalking thing that you're doing. I hear a lot of stories. So, so yeah, meeting you where you are, right? Really like thinking about like, how can I implement something to my life? And I know I can't do the cold turkey thing right away, but what can I do? That I think that's so important. So I appreciate you sharing that caveat for people.
Yeah, you have to put your energy, like you said, you have to put your energy in something else. And I know that process is going to be hard, but you can renew your mind. You can unlearn, right? Unlearn some old things and pick up some new habits, some healthy habits. Yeah, and we all been there. We've all played the fool before. I've been there. I get it, but it was only through my transition of renewing my mind and focusing my energy on other things that helps get you to a different level. And one day you wake up and you're like, oh, it don't hurt as much as it used to.
Yes, it's the same thing physically. If the doctors, you get a broken leg and they're saying you got to elevate it, put this on it, blah, blah, blah. A beginning part hurts really bad, but the more you do what the doctor says, it starts to like mend back into place. And literally that's what happens mentally. Our mind is going to fall in line with what we're presenting it. If I continue to run on a broken leg, my leg will never be healed, right? So just really be mindful of what you are choosing to doing, because it's a choice. And I say for some people, get really mindful. You may still choose to do something, but it's a conscious choice. And eventually you're not going to be comfortable with it. But a lot of times we're doing things very impulsively. So kind of get really conscious about what you're doing, which is good.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Go ahead.
And I'm about to say, yeah, and we just live in a day and age where we have a wealth of information that can help get you on track. You can be listening to Celeste podcast, and next thing you know, you done ran, all of her episodes. You done listened to all of them, and now you're thinking totally different.
Right.
So
right.
yeah, we live in a different day and age where you have some other options.
Right. You have Shon's podcast, Scary to Remarry. So I want you guys to check that out, right? Where you got people that are creating these brands based off of their passion. And a lot of times their passion has a lot to do with what they've gone through. And so like between podcasts, between YouTube, between books, they're free, right? And so I always tell people, look at your screen time. If you tell me you don't have time, pull out your phone, screen time, and let me know how much social media access time you have on there, right? So I think like we got to really start taking ownership and not tell ourselves we don't have time or saying like how am I supposed to do it when you can like look up the shade room and stalk some of those stories, right? So I just think like we just got to be really mindful of like what we're saying we can and cannot do. It's important. because I want to see my people heal, you know?
For sure.
So we know you got the podcast streaming everywhere, and we got the YouTube. And if people wanted to reach out to you, how could they do that? You're on Instagram
Yeah.
as well.
Yes, they can email me at scarytoremarry@gmail if they have any questions. And then again, you can find my podcast on any streaming platform. Just search Scary to Remarry. Social media is Scary to Remarry. You'll find me. I'm the only one that have that name. If you type it in, I'm going to be the first one to pop up. So you can find me there.
That makes sense. Shon, this was awesome. You're amazing. I appreciate you for listening to me and reaching out. I really enjoy like talking to people that kind of listen to the podcast, because you know what you're going to get. So I don't have to like pre-warn you that, you know, I could be all over the place, but it's fine and it's intentional. So I hope this was okay for you.
It was great. And then I found myself even like singing the intro sometime. The songs is playing in my head. You are now rocking with Celeste the Therapist. Let's go. I'm like, so you know, renewing my mind, right? I listen to you all the time.
Yes. One of my favorite scriptures. I talk to people like, you gotta renew your mind and your spirit, or you're gonna be attached to the world, and the world is chaotic. So we gotta do that stuff. So thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Celeste. Appreciate it.